and they're not familiar with the new algorithm that we put there because we're using something different, totally different, which is just a substitution. Transposition, on the other hand, is that we keep that process, we keep that algorithm, and we may shift um, elements from left to right, but we're not replacing the element altogether. So the best way I can really put this into a visual is when you think about I think about a algebra problem where it has a plus b equals c. Um, in substitution, we're going to take that b out and we're going to say a plus d equals c. And so now it changes up that whole problem, right? Whereas transposition, we're going to say A plus B equals C, and we're going to use a transposition algorithm where they're just going to shift that A to the B and shift the B to the A, but it still equals C. Okay, so I hope that was a good breakdown of how we're using symmetrical encryption. Remember, symmetric encryption is going to be a faster encryption, something that we use for streaming in the real world, streaming videos, things of that nature, and over a encrypted network. So it's a quicker, encryption versus asymmetric, and we'll get into asymmetric later. In this diagram here, you see what I was explaining in that last slide is that in symmetric algorithms, we're going to use that same key. It's just the problem is that when Alice wants to communicate with Bob, she's going to have to give him that key. Um, and then when you think about it in the real world, how am I supposed to give you a key securely? You understand? So do I walk down to your office and give you that key? Yeah, that's possible. That's possible, right? But say if you live in a different city, a different county, do I call you over the phone and give you that key, and then encrypt it and then let you unencrypt it once I give you after the phone call? Is that so secure? Mallory may be listening on the outside of my office, copying down the phone call that we're having. So that could be it's feasible, right? It's just not efficient. And so when we're thinking about on a one-on-one scale, it's easy to have one key and then we share that key however we want to share that key. Um, but a lot of times when we're working with um, hundreds of people, if not hundreds more of external people, we need to have more keys if we're going to and talk securely. Okay, so this is where asymmetric could come into play, where asymmetric is more secure and it's more scalable than symmetric keys. Symmetric algorithms. So just keep that in mind. That's going to be very, very. I'm pretty sure that's going to come up somewhere, somehow. That symmetric is good and fast, but it's not scalable. So it's not necessarily one. You don't want to use that for, let's say, 100 people, because when you think about it, everybody's going to need a key for every message that they will want to send out, and then you will need to make sure that you have a process to give those keys out in a secure manner as well. So every algorithm is going to use a key in order to make that algorithm more secure. So a lot of times you'll hear me say um, that we have algorithms, but then they have keys within them that make them unique. And that's an important part when it comes to making sure that we have some type of security and that other people know what type of algorithms that we're using, but they don't need to know the keys on which we are making those things secure. So think of it like, it's what makes your algorithm unique to your business. So it's it's a often practice that the key length be lengthened as well as salted, having variety of things put into it in order to make it even more unique Um, and the reason why we want to make these things unique is because we want to increase the factor of it not being guessable. So whenever someone is trying to hack that encryption, that algorithm, they can know the algorithm. That's fine. If it's a RSA algorithm, that's fine. But if they don't know the key, such as, did we use a three length key in order to, we ran that algorithm 3 times, or did we run it 16 times? When we add that key, it then brings on a more longer period for them to actually crack it. Okay. And so the more we lengthen our keys, the more we put on a factor of it being unguessable. Let's talk about asymmetric encryption. So we already talked about symmetric encryption, which uses the same key, right? Asymmetric is going to use something called a public key and a private key, two different keys. So this makes it way better when it comes to scaling, um, but it's also more confusing to that hacker to figure out which key um, that you have as a private key. Okay, so we're able to send messages out securely using our public key. Using our public key, but then we're able to decrypt any type of thing using our private key. And the reason why these keys can actually talk to each other, similar to the symmetric key, is because they're mathematically related. Okay, so they take very large prime numbers and they put those into the algorithms, and then they come up with a public key and a private key, um, and they name them accordingly. So that private key is meant for you only, and then that public key is something that we could put out there for anyone to see. And the prime, your more best, the best example that I can give you is on a certificate that you go onto a regular website, you look at those certificates, and you can see the public key of that website that you're going to. So that public key is there for anybody to um, take and then know that if I wanted to encrypt something, that I can use their public key and communicate with them securely. Okay, so um, it's a way better way to scale. We don't have to give everybody two pairs of keys. We can give you one pair of key, one key pair, and then we are going to take that and tell people to use your public key whenever you want to send something to you securely. So remember that is that symmetric keys, we're using two keys of the same key, right? I use my key to encrypt as well as decrypt, but in public keys, we're gonna have two keys, two different keys in there, public and private. So you can see here on this diagram that this is exactly how uh, key pair works, PKI. So they're going to, Bob's going to create his own public key and then give it to whoever who wants it, right? But then he's going to create another private key. And whenever you want to send something encrypted to him, you will use his public key in order to encrypt it. Once he receives that encrypted message, he will use his private key to unencrypt it. The reason why they talk to each other is because they're mathematically combined. They're drawn to each other that way, right? So I can give you my public key. That's no problem. And Mallory cannot decrypt it because in order for her to decrypt it, she just can't use my public key again to decrypt the message that was encrypted by my public key, right? She has to use my private key. So out of all of this, just remember that we never give away our private key, but in order to have people encrypt things for us, we give away our public key. Okay, and the name suggests it all, and just keep those things in mind. So whenever you want to talk securely to someone, you're going to use their public key in order to encrypt that message. Once they get it, they'll decrypt it with their private. Hashing. Hashing is similar to algorithms and encryption, but it's not. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a sliver of data and we're going to apply an algorithm to it, and we're only using this for integrity reasons only. So we're going to use that and we're going to make something similar to a fingerprint, something that's very unique to that particular data. Okay. So whenever we are taking a hash of something and we want to verify if it is truly what it says it is, then we're going to take a hash and compare those hashes. The reason why hashes are so used widely is because if anything within the data changes, the hash change. Okay, let me say that again because maybe I mashed everything up with my words. If anything within the data, the document changes, I don't care if it's a changing a capital letter to a lowercase letter, adding a 3 where there was a 2, putting in a comma, a space. It doesn't matter. Whatever you change on that particular document, if you make any minor change, it will change the hash that is um, computed on the other end of the algorithm. Okay, so that's great for whenever I want to send you something and you're looking at it and you're comparing the hashes and you're saying, wait a minute, this is not the same document because the hashes are vastly different. And that's and what I like about hashes is that that's what they are. They're not like the hash will come out and it will be one value change. No, it's a complete different hash. So it would look nothing similar to the original hash. And so we use those things as fingerprints to identify if any changes have been made. And they really support the integrity pillar when it comes to the CIA triad. Um, Hashes that you need to be familiar with are here on the slide. The SHA algorithms are very widely used, as well as the message digest. The message digest is going to be that the output that you see, and I should have some a lab that you can go to a website and we're gonna take some documents and throw them in there and make some hashes so you can see the output of taking one large document and throwing it in there and getting a 16-bit hash a hash value out of that, where you could take a 42-page document and get that same 16-bit hash value, or you could take a sentence and get a same 16-bit hash value. So they're very good to use when it comes to supporting integrity, and you need to be aware that it's not an algorithm, it's not encryption, but we do use it for the identification part of a data set. When addressing a digital signature, you're mostly going to see those type of transactions on the web. So a lot of times when we look at the certificates that a website has, they will have the digital signature there. So that digital signature is going to be the representation for basically their public key in order for you to communicate securely with it. So that's why it's so important that when we're doing browsing on the internet, that we're going to websites that we are familiar with, and then if they look kind of strange, do we look at the URL? We need to look at the URL and make sure that those digital certificates are there, because they're going to have a digital signature to verify who they are based off of those signatures, hashes, and algorithms in order to create that actual signature that goes into the certificate. So public key infrastructure is the only way that we would want to communicate on the internet. We want to make sure that people have their certificates that are given to them by a certificate authority, and that it represents who they say they are. Having these certificates, having those algorithms and those hashes represent who they are. It supports that integrity piece that we keep talking about with the CIA triad, but they also it supports that confidentiality too, if needed. So if we're going to use that to communicate securely. Let's say if we're a bank or we're sharing some type of sensitive information, we want to make sure that we have those certificates there, those algorithms placed on our websites in order to be able to send certain things securely and that Mallory is not being able to snip that network at that point in time and see things over a open network using using HTTP is just an open um, way of talking on the internet. And so whenever they're using a tool such as Wireshark, they'll be able to see that actual message that they're sending to that unsecure line of communication. But when we use a different protocol such as HTTPS, then that secure part of HTTP is now wrapped around an encryption um, tunnel and is being able to communicate from one spot to the next securely. And if anybody's sniffing that network, while they may see the traffic going back and forth, they're not able to interpret the traffic because it's not sent in plain text. In the last slide, you heard me reference certificate authorities in order to give those certificates out to people who own domains on the internet. And you want these certificate authorities to, verify you because there's only a hand group of them that are, pretty much the gatekeeper, so to say, to verify who you say you are. Um, Now, these certificate authorities, to make an analogy with it, or to give you some type of way of thinking about it as in the normal world, think of it as a driver, a DMV. So a DMV will verify who you are, and then they will say you also have the right to drive a car or to operate a Mack truck or a motorcycle. They're giving you a certificate, or in their case, they're giving you a license card in order to show you that you are verifiable to operate such machinery. Okay, and that's the same thing that a certificate authority will do. They will say, hey, what are you setting your website up to do? What is it used for? What is your audience? Who are you? How can we, who do we put in charge of who's in charge of this website? Things of that nature, and they verify with you that you are the correct owner of this website, and then they give you a certificate as a verification for everyone else to say, hey, we are who we say we are, and we uphold that integrity part of the CIA triad. Whenever you are teaching someone how to navigate on the internet, or you're explaining to them what a secure website looks like, you want to make sure that you look in, show them on a web browser how does that little lock look, and that you understand and have them understand that having HTTPS is a big part to communicating securely, and that they are ways for people to look at the information that they're sending across these networks. So that's why it's important to have a digital signature on your website, using a secure protocol such as HTTPS. And when you dive into deeper things such as sending packets, not packets, but documents over a website, we want to make sure that they're using other secure protocols such as SSL encryption, and making sure that those things are wrapped up in that tunnel as well. But it all starts with that digital certificate, making sure that it's stamped by that certificate authority, verifying who they say they are. So just when we, as security professionals, we just want to make sure that we relay that to our clients, our peers, we relay that to our family members, whoever's getting on this internet, and then they're actually conducting business or just having fun. We just want to make sure that they get that understanding. Throughout your career, you're going to realize that they're certificates that you're not going to need for every situation. but yet people are still reaching those websites via the web and via the network. So a lot of times we may want to self-sign our own certificates because it's internal. What we're using this web browser for it's an internal site. So therefore we don't need someone else to verify that it's secure. We want to make sure that we know that it's secure, and so we will self-sign those certificates. But it's not necessarily a great thing for you to self-sign a certificate and then put it out there for the public to see, because you could do it for malicious activity, but you could be naive enough to self-sign your own certificate and then put it out there, and it's a good way of being a victim that way. Okay, so and not necessarily it it will throw red flags to people who are looking at it in a malicious manner. Okay, so I don't want to trip over my words and say that it's going to not be hacked or be attacked in any type of way. But when you're self-signing certificates and then putting it out there on a public-facing website, then you're throwing red flags to people who are looking for those type of sites. So having self-signed certificates does have a place in the network. You just need to make sure that it's internal. Also, third-party CAs, or third-party certificates, should I say, is very important. Making sure that they stay up to date and that they are um, doing things properly as well, especially if you're using that supplier for a main product within your company. So it goes back to what I was saying about having your third party be a supplier of something that you're relying on to have business. If they're vulnerable in any type of way, you want to, as a security professional, you want to step up and say, hey, you might want to take a look at your certificates, make sure that they're properly installed right and that they're up to date. I seen that it was out of date. You might want to get with your CA, whoever assigned that to you, and make sure that it's up to date. And that in turn keeps your information that you share with them secure. So just having that wherewithal to know that you need to make people aware, because sometimes we miss over it, and you as a security professional, it's your job to catch those things and then alert people. And I want to be very clear when it comes to uh, re-establishing a certificate. It doesn't take much to do it, and it's pretty much just staying abreast with the type of account that you have with your CA, making sure that it doesn't go expired or um, be revoked is pretty much just in your realm. You have to take the responsibility of that. And as a security professional, if you're working for a company and you see that, you need to get in contact with whoever has registered your domain and making sure that we get this up and registered as quick as possible, because it's pretty much just saying um, that someone else could possibly take that domain and then register it under their name. Okay, and we don't want to have that to happen, right? Especially if we can have these things written down and remind us in a orderly fashion. So just be aware of those type of things and making sure that we stay abreast on those things and we get to them before we actually have an expiration date. Up to this point, I've been talking about key generation and key usage in the public key infrastructure based off of someone else is doing that. But in-house, sometimes you do have a team that will generate keys, such as self-generated certificates, right? So they're going to be generating keys. So it's important to understand the different types of categories that goes into key management, and this is what this slide details. So we're going to have key generation. What is the process of actually generating a new key? Do we have a process of why we're doing that? So who is in charge of those things, as well as storage? How we're storing our keys? Are we putting them within a network or a different VLAN, uh, a different network than everybody else? Are we going to store our keys uh, encrypted? So those different questions need to come up as far as storing, revocation. Whenever a key has become corrupted or has expired, what's the process of creating a new key? Going back to that key generation, and then expiration and renewal. From time to time, in any business that I've been in, there has been some type of life cycle that goes along. Companies are always changing, especially in the IT field. That not just the field of IT, but this your department of IT is always going to change different tools all the time. You may be stuck with a tool maybe 2 years tops, and then you're going to be rotating that tool out. So having keys set up to make sure that they're just not sitting on a server somewhere stagnant and still valid, but yet not being used. So how do we clean up that process? Are we being audited on those type of processes? So good things to know about key management if you're going to do this in house, or are you going to realize that we do have a team in house? These are some things that they need to consider when it comes to key management. When we generate crypto keys, we want to make sure that they're stored in a proper place. And so having them on a trusted platform module or a hardware security module will be the ideal spot for them. And then, we need to, and we'll talk about this, we need to make sure that we have a process for generating keys and then that they're stored properly and that we can bring them back and deploy them properly as well. Because it's more important about, once something goes wrong and we need to change our keys, that we have a smooth process as much as possible. Because everybody's still going to be doing their work, yet we're still need to make changes on the security side, or in this case, this will be the networking team on their side, and not disrupt everyone else while we're making these changes. So having that process um, written out and then practiced is very, very essential to how security operations would work in a day-to-day operation. Having a key escrow is pretty much just as it says, you're gonna keep keys kind of in the waiting on deck, ready to be used at a moment's notice. Because we never know when we need to actually implement those or deploy those. So we want to just keep them at the ready, ready to go whenever called upon. So it's important to understand how we're generating these and then how we're actually storing these and then how easy is it to implement these. Because sometimes you can implement them, but will it talk to everything correctly? Will it when you make changes in the network or in the network or in production, there's a good chance that you're gonna break something that's already been working. So having that process down pat is very vital in order for smooth operations on a day-to-day basis, because once we need to go ahead and start making changes, major changes, um, you're 9 times out of 10 going to disrupt the production in some type of way. As we been as we've been talking about encryption, um, there's several ways that we can apply it to the data that we're actually using. And those three things are pillars that we live by when it comes to encryption. So we either gonna encrypt data that's at rest, data that's in transit, or data that's in use. And as you can look at the slide here, you can see the difference between each one of those categories. But when data is at rest, it's pretty much sitting on a storage somewhere, um, some type of SAN drive or a share drive somewhere that's just kind of stagnant. It's not being changed. It's not. Uh, it's not being called upon to be reopened. It's just sitting there stored. And but yet, while it's sitting there, we don't want someone to be able to get hold of that and then see that information. So we want to encrypt that data. Um, the data in motion is the most that I've been talking about throughout this lesson, and that's encrypting uh, from endpoint to endpoint through over the internet. And so that data in motion needs to be encrypted. HTTPS, SSL encryption, those type of things creates that tunnel that allows us to keep prying eyes from seeing plain text traffic. And then data in use is when we're actually opening that document up and we're changing things as we speak. We want to make sure that, even if someone is able to see the changes, that they cannot see the actual plain text. So we want to make sure that that data in use is encrypted as well. Uh, the more popular way of encrypting data at rest is having some type of full disk encryption. Um, you see a lot of, excuse me, you see a lot of this on your mobile devices, but you also have it on a Windows machine and Mac as well, where you can encrypt a whole hard drive. For Windows, I know for sure it's called BitLocker. And once you encrypt that whole hard drive, it's going to ask you to log into that encryptor every time you log into your computer. And before it actually gives you the profile page to where you log into your profile, you're going to always need to log into that that BitLocker piece. And then it's going to allow you to log into your profile. So keeping those things in mind for the exam is going to be important. But the one thing that I want you to take away from this slide is those three pillars: data at rest, data in transit, and data in use. We all want to use encryption on those factors. To reiterate the things that I've been saying in the earlier slides of this lesson, um, having encryption on your data traffic is so important to have, and it is something that you always need to bring up if you don't hear it. Just to kind of, it should be taken as granted that we're using secure methods in order to have a secure network, but you want to check with your networking team if you haven't heard anything. Maybe you want to ask a question, hey, what type of SSL encryption are we using? What type of TLS encryption are we using? Um, are we using IPsec? Are we using a VPN connection? These type of things. And maybe you don't have to word it like that, but maybe you say, what version are we on? And in order to spark the conversation to see if there's something that we're actually using. And if, if you'll be surprised if you're not using something. And then you want to, as a security professional, you want to coach them in the right direction of saying, okay, since we're not using this and this is how we're operating, the more secure method is to provide a VPN concentrator in here. So I'll go and look up a vendor that offers that service, and then we'll look at the pricing on how much to bring them on. Okay, so but it's always important to have those things in place. We just don't want to assume that we're automatically using it. We do, as security professionals in this field, we want to know for sure what are we using, and then how are we using it, and what is our plans for the future. Are we gonna keep it, or are we gonna go with a different vendor? Are we gonna go about it a different way? Because maybe we might change the model of the business model, and we may not need a VPN access anymore. So those are things to keep in mind when it comes to encrypting that data over the network. Another interesting fact about creating keys is the process of salting and then stretching the key. These processes, while you don't need to know how to conduct them, it's important to understand that it's being done. So you can ask the proper questions to make sure that we're doing those type of things. So salting and then stretching the key is pretty much putting randomizations into our key process in order to create a a random key more than a straight processed key. And so when we're throwing that extra bit into that, we're keeping it a guessing game for our hackers to, not be able to say, okay, they're using a Shaw algorithm, then it should be the keys can only be, a certain amount. If we're gonna throw a salt into it, or we're gonna stretch that key out, then it creates a randomness that, you know, you would just have to be plain lucky to get it within a certain time frame. Okay, so having these two elements placed into a known algorithm that we have creates a randomness that is going to work for us as far as defending against a brute force attack, where it may take 3, 4 days for them to crack an encryption code. It may take them millions of years now because we have added that extra randomness to it. So blockchaining is a way that we can have hashing functions on a calculated value, and we can use it in a peer-to-peer setting. Having a value that is um, based off integrity, so we know for sure that if anything changes, we are well aware of it, and we can say and prove that it has been changed because of the hash functions, right? But then in a peer-to-peer site, that we can use we can hash one value, but then pass it on, and that our next peer can have a peace of mind that we are giving them the right value. What you see this in mostly is Bitcoin. Bitcoin, when you get that wallet, you get a Bitcoin wallet, is based off of blockchaining to where you understand that you have whatever the wallet says it is based off integrity of the blockchain, that it is correct and it hasn't been tampered by anybody else. And when you pass that blockchain on to someone else, if you purchase something or what have you, then they can have confidence that the integrity piece has been passed on to them as well. So for the last slide here on this lesson of encryption, we're going to talk about obfuscation. Obfuscation is pretty much hiding something within plain sight. Um, for the exam, you're definitely going to need to know what steganography is, and that's taking a picture, some type of JPEG, and changing one bit to hide information within that bit, and being able to send that across to someone else.